All righty. We ready to go, Councillor Elliott? We got 2 o'clock apparently, says our IT department, so we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I call the November 4th regular committee of the whole meeting to order. We have a slight tweak in the agenda today that we are going to add section 91E as a reason for closing the meeting on the closed meeting section there in point 3. So can I get a motion for the amended agenda? Councillor Elliott.
So moved, and we don't need seconders, I guess.
We do not. Councillor Dow, you have a comment?
The question, what is 91E?
Is the acquisition, disposition, expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. That is unanimous. There we go. It's been a while since I've sat here. Step 3, a motion to close the meeting to the public, which is in the paper in front of us. Councillor Elliott.
I move that the committee move into a closed meeting to discuss matters covered by the community charter under section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, and E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality.
All in favor? It's unanimous. We will reconvene at 3:30.
I tried to stall for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for our delay. And we welcome back those that caught us before to our regular committee of the whole meeting for November the 4th. Apologies, we were a little delayed coming out of our closed session. We have previously adopted our agenda, but I did want to take a moment to acknowledge that we're having this meeting on the traditional territories of the Tla'amin Nation, who have stewarded this land for thousands of years. Our public input period normally revolves around things related to legislative matters, committee recommendations, and new business, of which we have none on this agenda. So we don't have a need for the public input period at this time. So I will move to the consent agenda. Councilor Isaacson.
I move that the November 4th, 2025 consent agenda be adopted.
Okay, we do not need a second. So any discussions or removals needed? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And seeing nobody opposed, that is unanimous. Moving into unfinished business, 11.1, Community Belonging Project Findings and Deliverables, our Director of Planning, or Mr. Hugo.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here today. The purpose of today's report is to share the findings and deliverables of the Community Belonging Project. Joining me this afternoon are Mariko and Janet, who are here on behalf of the Community Belonging Project and who will be speaking very shortly about the work that they've done to advance this project. And so, as a bit of a refresher for members of the committee, initial conversations around this project began in the fall of 2023 when a member of the community belonging team reached out to the city to inquire about the possibility of entering into a partnership on an initiative to advance or enhance community belonging and participation among children with disabilities and their families in Powell River. This initiative followed fairly recent developments within the equity, inclusion, and accessibility space with the passing of the Accessible BC Act in 2021, and in 2022 with the publishing of a provincial report that found that children that are excluded from formal childcare with respect to or due to their disabilities are oftentimes excluded from other opportunities as well. And so based on these developments and conversations with senior leadership at the city, it was determined that the community belonging team could then be engaged in conducting an environmental scan of city programs, services, and resources, with the understanding that research findings can then contribute towards the city's OCP rewrite, as well as its involvement with the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee. The city subsequently entered into an MOU with the Community Belonging Team on November 27th, 2023, with funding and support provided by VCH, the University of Victoria, and BC Healthy Communities. Fast forward to today, and we've received a number of deliverables from the team. And so I'll now pass the mic over to Janet or Mariko, who will introduce their team and conduct a bit of a deeper dive into their research findings and processes.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Nice to be with you all this afternoon, and hi staff as well. My name's Mariko Kubota, and this is Janet Newbury with me from the Community Belonging Project team. I want to just point your attention to the blue bar on this slide to remind you of the purpose of this work that we entered in our MOU with the City of Powell River. So the purpose of this work is to better understand and support the participation and belonging of young children with visible and invisible disabilities and their families living in our region. And so I come to you as a representative of our Community Belonging Project, and also want to acknowledge that we're joining you on the traditional and treaty territory of the Tla'amin Nation, which represents the region that we have been supporting with this work. And so I'll introduce or reintroduce our team to you, remind you of the process and sort of detail the process that we undertook in this project. And then I'll pass it over to Janet, who will give you an overview of the findings, the recommendations, and our products we've produced in collaboration with the city. I also want to take a moment to thank Hugo and Jason, because these two have really provided an incredible amount of leadership in this collaboration. We wouldn't have been able to do it without their leadership. We also will acknowledge that Lisa Balpulsing, as former CAO, played a significant role in this. And it'll be highlighted to you throughout the presentation that we really heard from and incorporated input and recommendations from all staff across departments. So our team is made up of project advisors. They are Tabitha Berggren, Cheyenne Bankhausen, Frankie McQuaid, and then those of us who are providing the research support are myself, Morgan Skinner, Alison Gerlach, and Janet Newbury in association with UVic. So what did the process look like? We engaged initially with the City of Powell River and Kahaman Nation. And as Hugo mentioned to you, we were very much working under the new BC Accessibility Act as well, that was implemented for all municipalities to embed the Accessibility Act into the work that you do. So we've also been engaged with the Joint Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, and that of course includes the representation from the Cathet Regional District, the Powell River Public Library. And in order to do this work, we really wanted to start with interviews of staff across departments, and they really informed our initial understanding about how we can be more inclusive and support the engagement of children and families with disabilities. The project advisors also played a significant role because they themselves come with lived experience of disabilities and or are parents and guardians of children with disabilities. So they provided equity site visits of city facilities to provide input and insight into city facilities as well. The environmental scan that Janet will speak to a little bit more in detail also incorporated a better understanding of city-run policies, programs, and services, and external resources that are related to legislation. You'll see a quote here that really came forward from Lisa Balpulsing, the former CAO of City of Powell River, and she really provided this championing at a policy impact forum that we held with city staff across departments. I'll pass it to Janet to dive into details with you now.
Thank you, and hello everybody. I won't go into any great detail around any of the content because you've all received the summary report, but I'll just give sort of a brief overview of some of the key findings. The environmental scan, as Mariko mentioned, included the equity site visits, as well as reviewing internal documents, as well as reviewing external documents. And we looked at quite a lot of those in order to provide context and recommendations. And we learned, first of all, as I'm sure everyone here knows, that there are a lot of children and youth in this region who live with disabilities. And from the vital signs report in particular, we learned that they regularly experience and witness ableism in their daily lives. So that's a significant finding. Additionally, we also saw that when looking at some of the central documents, which you can see some of them listed there, children with disabilities in particular are not explicitly considered in any of the most central, including the Accessible BC Act. So thinking about how we might more intentionally consider the experiences of children with disabilities and their families in all of the work that is done in this region was sort of, as Mariko mentioned, a central purpose of this work. So again, I won't go into the details of the findings, but this framework helped us organize them and think about them in a way that felt potentially useful. The top row, this is a framework which is referenced at the bottom of the slide there, 6 conditions of system change. When we're looking to think about something like ableism, it is around structural change. And so this framework suggests that if pursuing structural change in relation to anything, oftentimes we look at just the top row, changing policies, changing practices, and if we're lucky, changing resource flows, like adding people or adding money. But this framework suggests that if we only focus on that top row, we are either unlikely to make change that's effective or establish change that's lasting. And so it suggests moving down the triangle to the bottom 2 rows to consider implicit and semi-explicit approaches to change. So the middle row is around relationships and connections and power dynamics. And this is where there's a lot of potential for change that doesn't require additional resources, such as training and things like reducing staff turnover. So when you do invest in training, it's a useful investment because you're not having to retrain and retrain, things like that. And then the bottom one is mental models or values, being really explicit about values. And this framework suggests that an approach to pursuing structural change is to start at the bottom and move to the top because that creates a foundation. So that's the order of these recommendations on the left-hand side of the screen. So being really clear and explicit about a commitment to inclusion and belonging, and then being deliberate about using language in all documents, communications, website policies, RFPs, et cetera, that uphold that commitment, and making disability visible. So how, for instance, if there's a needs assessment being done, can the needs of particular families be included in that process, making disability visible in all of the work that we do, or on the website, for example, or in a rec guide. Planning for equitable community engagement. So a lot of the information, particularly from external sources that we looked at, was around how to ensure people whose voices might systemically be excluded from civic engagement be meaningfully and deliberately actively included. And then based on what they've shared from their own experience, train people, which contributes to a culture shift. And then when these top row changes are made, they're more likely to be lasting because it's not relying on specific champions anymore. It's more embedded within the culture of the organization. So the report includes specific recommendations under each of those subheadings under number 6, based on what we heard from, saw in the environmental scan, and also heard from the project advisors and from city staff at the Policy Impact Forum about what felt feasible and doable for them. And then the final step is just to ensure ongoing learning is put into regular operations so that as you hear from community members, changes can be made in decision-making along the way. So as Hugo mentioned, there are 3 final deliverables. The summary report includes the context as well as details about the process and the recommendations, and then it also has a lot of references and links if you're interested. There's also a small document that was recommended by project advisors called a Client Services Handbook, which includes like a 1-pager that can be a visual prompt for people who are working directly with the public and particularly in relation to community engagement, to consider accessibility and inclusion in their work. And then the third deliverable is a video that was produced locally by the Diversa Collective to make the findings and recommendations accessible and to hopefully support public communication and dialogue around this topic. Implementation recommendations I kind of addressed them in my previous comments, but I'll quickly note the first one around the culture shift just requires being explicit interdepartmentally about a shared commitment to accessibility and belonging, and then implementing those easier to reach operational changes that are highlighted in the report. And then at a system-wide level, there are certain things that the organization is already committing to do, such as Hugo mentioned, the rewriting of the official community plan. So rather than adding this as a piece of work, thinking of it more as a lens through which to view current commitments. So such as a community engagement strategy that is equitable, any new or existing policies that are being reviewed to be reviewed through the lens of inclusion and accessibility, and the official community plan update. And then in terms of sharing knowledge, sharing the findings, it could be throughout the organization in those ways, but also throughout the region. There are organizations that are also doing really great things in this area and are keen to be sharing knowledge. So continuing the conversation throughout the region. And then in order to support municipalities to do this work, it is helpful to have the conversation provincially as well. So whether it's UBCM or other opportunities to support advocacy, to support you, to enable your staff to do this work. That's another opportunity for knowledge mobilization. I think that is it, unless, okay. Yeah, I think we'll just open the floor now for any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, team, for this report, for doing this project and bringing this information to light. So I will open up the floor to the committee for any questions anybody might have. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Janet and Mariko. So nice to see you here again, Mariko. So as many of you know, I have been doing my best to be a parent to some folks, to some children with some disabilities. And some of the experiences I had with them when they were small was very, very hard, including them in recreation services that are organized by our city. So the main thing that is needed when a child with special needs is in a swim class or a recreational, signed up to be in a recreational thing, is is extra adults supporting children who need the extra help. And when there isn't that happening, and your child is unable to participate the same way other children are because they require that extra support, they inevitably call the parent and say, you have to come get your kid because we can't handle them. And so that's the general response in almost all things for children who require extra support. And so making plans for inclusion would include having the right amount of staff to support children who require extra help. Is that explicit in this report?
Yes, I mean, that comes to the top right hand, human resources and financial resources. And I think that's why the advocacy is so important, because there are certain things that can be done without additional resources, but not everything can. And so, yes.
Yeah, mainly if children are to be able to participate with the extra support that they require, that extra support has to be made in the plan, right? And so generally speaking, we have the provincial regulations for in daycares for how many adults you need per child. Do not consider this. All of the requirements you require for your licensing do not include this. And so children are essentially left out of after school programs, recreation programs, and if they require extra help. So anyone requiring extra help over and above the minimum is excluded from everything in our city. And so I'm kind of making that point, not really asking a question, but trying to raise awareness for how hard that is for parents who also have to work and take care of kids, and they really can't put their kids where other parents can. Thanks.
Make a comment.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is so important. And one of the things that we heard was around, like, it can be helpful because there are ways to bring along extra support, even if it's not city funded support, but city staff do need direction to enable that. So for example, if there is a program that requires traveling on a bus, are staff directed to fill every seat in that bus with a participant in the program, or are they able to reduce the number of participants in the program so that bus seats can be allocated to support? So that wouldn't require extra funding of support workers if it's possible to partner, like that's also in the report, is recommending partnerships to make this kind of support possible. If it's not possible to be funded right away directly by the city, but having some direction for staff to prioritize inclusion would enable them to make that decision, to have a seat on the bus for support at the very, very least. Does that make sense?
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for coming today. I found a lot of your recommendations would benefit everyone. They're not specific to children with disabilities. Some of them are, but I think changes with them in mind would benefit us all. I'm wondering, among your recommendations, and also considering the policy conversation that you had with city staff on what's realistic, what's possible, if you could identify some of your recommendations that are most specific to children with disabilities, just to highlight some things that are notable for the demographic that was, the focus of your research.
It's really, I will share some, but also some of the ones that are valuable for everybody are also specifically valuable for that population.
Oh, absolutely.
I think what Cindy's talking about, for sure, ensuring program design is not based on a presumption of like any kind of typical person. That program design actually is inclusive of the diversity of the children who live in this community, and so that things like ratios can be realistic. And then training is a huge one. A lot of the barriers that we heard about are relational and attitudinal, and so investing in training to support people to create environments that are more comfortable for more people, more children and families, and then working to maintain well-trained, highly skilled staff so that there's not turnover and there becomes some kind of like institutional memory, I guess, and capacity. Communication is huge. Parents do a lot of work navigating services and information, and if there's just a void of information, it adds a lot of labor. So even if a service is not available, providing information about where that service is available is still useful, or even providing information that the service is not available and that it's being worked on. Those things are useful too, just to reduce the amount of labor that parents have to do to just find out what they can access. And signage, trying to think. Yeah, that's off the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd love to add a little bit. First, I would like to address you, Councillor Elliott, around what you just shared about your personal experience needs to be centered in all this, because it's the heartache and the pain of the parents that has really been paramount in how the entire sort of systems and structures we're all operating in. The norm is that ableism is the way we're all functioning. So anybody that falls out of that norm ends up experiencing barriers to be able to participate. And when we lack choice to participate, that's a very disempowering experience. And when it's children in particular, it's even harder for us to see. And so part of the things that Janet was speaking about is that parents often end up being the advocate on behalf of their children with disabilities. And so some of the pieces to Councillor Isaacson, your questions around specific opportunities may be around just amending some of the ways that engagement is possible, and noting that it's not always possible to engage in the current normative structures that we have for communicating, providing input, and attending events or discussions or open houses. So those are all in the report as well. I say that with the caveat that this is complex. And to address these issues of ableism and the barriers that children and families face requires looking at all the levels of engagement. And I want to note that even with that, Councillor Elliott, you mentioned a specific example of like the rec complex, for example. You should be very proud of your staff. Because when we conducted the interviews with your staff across all departments, it isn't that there is a lack of desire to support accessibility, inclusivity. I wish you could have been in every conversation we had with every single staff person that we had a privilege to talk to in depth. They talked about the barriers they see as staff that they wish they could change too. And some of them shared their own lived experiences with us, which we will not note and share. But to note that, I think that it demonstrates that if it was as simple as having a staff person change behavior or a program, this would look very different and our recommendations would look quite different to you. But because the issue is so complex, you'll see that they're layered in these components that relate to behavior, culture, attitudes, worldviews, but it also speaks to policies, structures, and the infrastructure that's at play that either already exists or that we want to change. And finally, just a tangible example is that even in this past year, in working on this project, we actually saw some programming become available, like a new swim class available for children who might find it way too stimulating and inaccessible to enter swimming lessons. And so there was a designated program of swim lessons that made the class smaller, that turned off the music in the pool and dimmed the lights. And it's just doing some of these shifts that allow for more of that shift to happen. And I'm really thrilled to share with you that not only did that happen with the city at our rec complex, but it happened at the Patricia Theatre as well. And so there have been events where a movie was put on at the theater, and it was explicit in terms of welcoming children and families to come with earmuffs, blankets, sit where you want to, making sure it's still safe to exit the building for fire code, but just making these adjustments to make a new experience possible so that children and families can actually access that space and that experience. So I hope that giving you some of those tangible examples can help you visualize what's possible. And I think all of you will know how to shift things at the programmatic level, but also at the policy level as well.
Thank you. Mayor Wasnow.
Thank you for your presentation. All River has both an association and parents that have contributed significantly to accessibility. I'm referring to Marg and Dave Hodgins and referring to inclusion. Have you had the opportunity to talk with them and understand those examples that they have put into practice that would be useful for others that are thinking about this?
Sure. I've been on the Joint Accessibility and Inclusion Committee, supported by Jessica, for example. And indeed, these names that you've named are leaders in our community, and they continue to advocate, and we've been in communication and connection. We've provided this project updates to the Joint Accessibility Committee, so there's been awareness. And indeed, I think, Mayor Wasnow, what you're also alluding to is our region has actually been quite a leader in accessibility in the past, and we have a very rich history in that. We explored that in this work, and we acknowledge it as well. At the same time, I think we've seen evolution and things have changed, so that's also to note. I don't think we've consistently kept up our accessibility and inclusion in those efforts, but we have deep and rich, I think, legacy related to this. So the fact that we've been able to work on this project with the city has been also, we hope, another node in that. And I think in response to your question, I'll just note that the answer is yes. And the focus of this specific work was to address the accessibility and inclusivity of children with disabilities, both visible and invisible. So we've had those conversations with both inclusion and the advocates.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Isaacson, one more.
Yeah, question for staff, actually, through the chair. the report doesn't have any specific recommendations or possible motions for council to consider, but does talk about opportunities to integrate recommendations at the staff level. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to the direction that's needed from council versus the opportunities that staff see to carry out these priorities on without council direction, given existing strat plans and existing direction that council has provided to staff.
Good afternoon, Council. I think it's an opportunity to look at the report from the perspective of operation. I do think that there's a lot of operational components to what's being presented here today. And so therefore there wasn't a recommendation to Council. Council is still in a position to, if they make a strong recommendation, to direct staff to either integrate these in a more formal way. However, this is what I would refer to as background information that we are going to utilize, at least from a planning perspective, as we build the rewrite for the official community plan. I think, as it was mentioned, the engagement strategy is another piece of information. So again, this would be council's purview if they wanted to make a more formal direction to staff. But I think at this point, staff are quite comfortable with these documents as background to work forward, and perhaps the CAO might want to speak a little bit to the operational component. I don't know if I'm throwing you in there or not, but
through the chair, yeah, what's great about this is this provides a lens, I think, for the municipality to utilize as we move forward with the numerous plans that are going to be coming down the pike over the next time. Director Gao has mentioned a few of them, including the official community plan and the engagement plan. It's a lens. I don't necessarily think we need a direct motion to do anything with it. We've participated in it. There's good buy-in. It's just part of what feeds into the planning process moving forward.
Councillor Elliott.
Just a small follow-up on Councillor Isaacson's question. Some of the recommendations around being purposeful with our language in all of our materials and including specific goals for feedback from our clients in our operational processes. And how could we have staff help us provide the intentional direction that should happen rather than just leaving it?
And thank you. I mean, it is one of those where I can think of previous council strategic plans that have similar language that would instruct staff to adopt practices. I think there's a current statement in the strategic priorities, if not mistaken, about the idea of open for business. I'm open for business could be very broad, but I do think that that is one way. Again, your council, it would be your purview to establish something more formal if you wish to do so. But I do think this is one that staff can look at this and see this as operational, and where it makes sense to look at additional training for staff, where it makes sense to look at bylaw language. Again, council would have a role in that, but if it's looking at our forms that we are requesting for different activities, those are at this point and within staff's purview. And so I think there's it's an interesting place of how close you want to be as council directing what I see as operational, but again, that it would be council's purview.
Councillor Palm.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate the presentation today. One thing keeps going through my mind when we talk about youth, disability, accessibility, programming. Is an organization I work with for close to 40 years, which is school district. You work closely with them. They've come a long way on accessibility. I know that firsthand. Have you got any examples of specific programming that they've changed to accommodate our youth in this regard? Because they get funded to do so. I'm just have to ask the question.
That's definitely outside the scope of this project. So anything that we would know would just be through our other roles, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Palm, I think what's so great about that question is you're thinking about all the players that surround us and like the Joint Accessibility Committee. Yeah, it includes like the Cuthbert Regional District and the public library. So we've dove into this specifically with them, but we haven't specific with Cuthbert School District 47. And I don't want to speak on their behalf in terms of the program because I haven't participated specifically on the planning and or policy opportunities on accessibility and inclusivity projects. But I hope with giving you that honest answer, it may encourage you to keep that curiosity open for a discussion with the school district, because indeed they are directly confronted with them, given their constituents are the students who are children and youth. And I think there is maybe perhaps some cross-learning to occur among staff from the municipality to the school district. Yeah, so maybe I'll just leave it at that if that's okay. Okay.
Seeing no further questions, thank you guys for your time and for your presentation and for all the work that you're doing. Thanks. Moving into 11.2, the Powell River Community Forest City and Community Projects Update. Acting Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Fraser.
Good afternoon, members of the, Chair and members of the committee. We have a report for you on the status on our community projects funded in part or wholly by Powell River Community Forest. And we've got a bit of a financial update for you as well on the reserve fund. I will say that Mr. Josh Cronin, our project manager, could not be here this evening, so I'm happy to fill in for him. I'm not going to pretend I'll know exactly if there's some pretty technical questions, but I'll do my best to answer what I can. With that, included in the report before you is a snapshot of the projects that the city is doing, the ones that are completed, the ones that are in progress, deferred, and there's one in there that's looking to be canceled as well. So with that, we've also got a bit of a snapshot for 2025 and 2026. There's some to be submitted in the fall of this year, and 3 for 2026 as well. So I can answer questions on the city projects. We've got updates from the community as well. So the community projects for you, which were available at the time of this report being written. Of course, I may not be able to answer those questions for you, but we can take down questions and respond later if we can do a little bit of research there for you. With that in mind, there's a projected balance of just a little under $8 million in the reserve. That's estimated, including approved city projects, community grants, and estimated dividends and interest for 25 and 26. And that would be a high-level estimate for the end of 2026. And again, just under $8 million in that reserve at the end of 2026 estimated. This bookending this, it doesn't include any projects that are currently in our 5-year plan that are past 2026. Those projects need to be reviewed moving forward. With that, yeah, just looking for adoption of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. And yeah, leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. I'll start us off. I was curious about the solar project in the library because I believe that was the one that was canceled. And it was referencing staff's ability to be able to maintain it was one of the challenges of that potential project. And I was just curious, was that in terms of just whatever maintenance would be required on upkeep of solar panels? And if that was the case, and let's say a future council decided to add solar as a strategic priority to city buildings, as I'm sure some places are doing, what would staff need to be able to facilitate something like that down the road, hypothetically?
Yes, and through the chair, I think it was mostly staff capabilities, limitations, staffing, resources allocated to that project, just not being available. Should that be wished to be explored in the future, it's easy enough to put into a capital plan to look at that, not only that facility and possibly more.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee? Councillor Isaacson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, there's reference to one of the funded projects is the contract manager itself, and that there is some funding remaining at the end of 2025. How long do we foresee being able to engage that that contracted person, project manager?
Yes, through the chair, that is a contracted position for 2 years with the organization.
And so when will it end?
May of 2027. I'm going to say May or June of 2027.
Okay, so when it says that there is some funding remaining for that funding will take us till 2027 for that position?
Through the chair, so that funding will take care of the majority of that funding that's needed. There will be, I believe, another component that we'll be bringing forward as part of the budget package, a small portion of that.
And second question, got a nod. Transit bus shelters is on the list of items that are in progress. It's last on the list. I get asked about this all the time and or hear complaints or concerns, myself being a bus user using that stop as well. Plans to complete the shelter in 2026. Do you have a sense of when in 2026, heading into winter season right now?
Through the chair, so I will say we're hopeful the first quarter of 2026. We're actively working with the mall owner right now to solidify that agreement to be able to put those shelters in place.
Any questions from the committee? Sir Elliott.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at this table, and we have some labels, some city projects, community grant projects, and in progress community grant projects. Can we just kind of get a quick description of what the difference between all those are?
Through the chair, absolutely. So I'm looking at one of those graphics now. So the completed projects, I'll just give you an example, a couple of them. So the mid-level connector going from the rec complex out to the soccer pitch at the high school there. So that was completed this year. So that is under the completed portion on the list. And moving down, an example of an in-progress portion would be, an in-progress project, a lot of P's in that sentence, recreation complex electrical upgrades and emergency backup system. So that one is in progress. So there's bits and pieces of that project that's already been completed and it's working. So it's in progress. Things have been ordered and we've engaged a contractor to proceed with that. And I believe parts of that upgrade have been completed already. So that's an in progress example. Deferred, the deferred portion where it says a project is deferred, that's just simply pushed to a different year. So it's still on the books. Instead of being 2026, for example, it might be pushed to 2027 to align better with other grants or just staff capacity or construction, things like that. So deferred means just pushed to a different year.
And that's called new city projects in the table?
No.
They're not in the table then?
But yeah, and which table are you talking? Are you talking about Appendix A, Councillor Elliott?
Sorry, I'll just go to the top and find out what I'm talking about here. The page 8 of 9 has a table with financial implications. And so I was just trying to figure out which things fit in these topics that we have. And so the deferred projects, are they not in the table or are they part of the new city projects plan for 2026?
My apologies. I was going through the different lists, so.
Yeah, no, well, those were good examples of what ones belonged in which categories. But what I'm
Right.
trying to figure out is what these categories mean.
Sure. So you're looking into financial implications. So walk you through those. So there's a balance as of December 31st, 2024, 17 million. And then there's city projects spending in 2025. You see that number there, 983,000. And then moving down, we've got projects that are in progress. They're approved by the Powell River Community Forest, and this is the estimate to complete those ones. Next, so fourth down is new city projects planned for 2026. There's a number there, so $847,000. And those are as per budgets, but to be submitted for approval yet. Going down from there, community projects spending 2025, 720,000 and change. Funds not yet drawn from the reserve. So that's a year-to-date 2020.
And so what is meant by a community project?
Say again the question, please.
What is meant by a community project? Which kinds of projects are in that category?
Good question. So I'll draw your attention to Appendix B at the end of the report. And pardon me, I guess that's probably still under Appendix A. So it's the second last page, just before the bylaw, and the list of community projects is shown there. And that's all I'll call it the non-city projects. So, and what I mean by that is the projects that are for community driven. So there would be community groups that would come forward and ask for
grants.
Funds. Yes.
Okay, so they're part of the grant program.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
These are all part of the grant program.
Well, we don't give grants to ourselves, but anyway, carry on.
Good.
And then, so the community projects are grants that are underway already, but approved?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then the community grants projects, those are estimates that we expect to approve in upcoming grant programs?
Yes, I believe so. I believe our CAO has a comment to make.
Just making sure, through the chair, this is an estimate of the budget that will be set aside for
2026.
And again, this hasn't come to council yet, but will be part of the budgeting process moving forward. And it's a placeholder, which is why it says estimate.
And in that 1.2, is that the upcoming fall part of it too, or?
No, that would be separate.
Is that in this table somewhere?
The total amount, I believe, might be a mix of it, but I don't think that until we get the actual dollar value from the fall grant process, we'll know exactly what that number will be.
Okay, so that may change this number as well.
Which number, the 1.2?
This,
the bottom number?
yeah.
The bottom number will change 100% guaranteed. And that's why it says estimate. And there's an estimate for the dividends. There's an estimate for grant. And with those major numbers being estimates, this number will change. It's only supposed to be a high level overview of approximately what's in it at the end of 2026. And again, there are a number of community forest funds that are in the 5-year financial plan right now for capital items that aren't included in here either. That will change the overall number once they've been refined. So again, this is just meant to be a snapshot in time to give a general overview of where it's at. Don't take this as the gospel number at the end, and it will change.
I know, I was just trying to track along what was included in each of these things. And so I think the community project spending for 2025 includes an estimate for our fall grant allocation. The in-progress community grant projects at the 599, I'm not quite sure how that's different than the community projects for 2025. Is there I'm guessing we get out grants for those ones. That's why there's a specific number there. And these ones up here are estimated that we haven't quite finished the grants on yet. So, okay, thanks.
Yeah, and through the chair, it is a little bit of a convoluted accounting process because there's a number of years of grants and some of them are being paid out this year, some of them have been approved this year, some of them have been approved at different points in time. The bottom number though at the end is there is a healthy balance in there at this point in time, but it's variable on what is the final dollar value for the fall grant program, what is actually going to be put into the budget for the grant program next year, including city projects, what is going to be coming in terms of dividends for both 2025, 2026, and the interest allocation as well. So there's a number of moving parts. It's meant to provide an overview.
Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. Back to page 4 of the main report, projects update, item 13, transit bus shelters. I'm assuming that actually is the town center mall, not the town site mall.
Through the chair, you are correct. Yep, that is the town center mall.
Okay, my question is, I've had questions, not really recently, but not in that far past, with regard to washroom facilities for bus drivers. Is that part of this, or is that not part of this?
Through the chair, yes, it is part of this. It would be
Okay.
part of the agreement that we're working on right now.
Okay, so that's pending then. Thank you.
And before we go to round 2, any other remaining council with questions? Okay, seeing none, Councillor Isaacson.
So I just wanted to maybe clarify a question that Councillor Elliott had. One of her questions was related to deferred projects. And so I wanted to confirm that projects that have been approved but have been deferred are in that 7.2 million under the in progress city projects, or are the deferred projects not incorporated in here? They're in the in progress even though they've been deferred. Okay.
Through the chair, yes, they are included.
Seeing no further questions and no action needs to be taken, so I appreciate Mr. Fraser's time and the update from all of staff.
Thank you.
Moving further along in our agenda to the public clarification, we'll start off with the media. Mr. Glinsky, any questions? Glad we could beat you to the punch. So, Mr. Tate, anyone online by chance? Okay, thank you. Anyone from the gallery who'd like to comment? Come on up, sir, and introduce yourself, please. Questions, sorry, yes, not a comment. Questions regarding the agenda.
Okay, my name is John Brownsell, and before I get point of ordered, I want to clarify a few things. First of all, in consent agenda, item 8.2 was never requested to be removed from the consent agenda or be considered separately or any reason and without debate. First point. Second point is that the council voted on the recommendation for the package of 8.1 and 8.2. A recommendation was read out, no discussion, and voted on. So therefore it was discussed at this meeting, technically. So my question is, the letter you received from the Ministry of Tourism regarding 4 name changes, are they in our area? Did you have any input? And where are they? What are the name changes to?
Sure. So the letter actually states that there are all 4 in the RD. None of them are actually in the city. And the letter was there for reference. Our committee was given the opportunity to remove anything from the consent agenda if they wish to discuss it anymore or make any amendments, and nobody extended that desire. So the consent agenda, the purpose of the letter is just to receive it for public record, and everything else is contained in the letter.
Wouldn't it be, now that you have the press here, wouldn't that be a good time to make it all public?
Oh, it's on the agenda, so that is public.
Well, it's on the agenda, but it was never spoken. Why wasn't it spoken?
There's many things that are on the agenda that aren't spoken when we.
I realize that, but all I'm saying is it was technically discussed and I asked the question on it. So you can answer the question.
I thought I did, but I'll give Councillor Elliott a chance.
Hey, John. So the 4 name changes, 2 of them are on Tuxedo Island. 1 of them are within the watershed of the Little Slamon Lake, and the other one is on the end of Savory Island. It used to be called Indian Point, is now called I can't say it very well, but yeah. And so all of those areas were, and the entire thing was referred to the regional district, and all of the representatives from the regional district had made a motion that there wasn't objection to these name changes because the people from Tuxedo were on board, the people from Savory, and the lake is part of the Coahoma lands anyway. So
What are the new names?
They're in the letter.
Yeah, they're in the letter. You can see them in the letter. Oh, okay. Well, if you go online and you click on the link, it takes you to the actual letter with the maps and everything.
Can we pronounce them?
I could with some help, but I'm probably not going to be able to do it on the spot. But they're not hard to pronounce. It's that the characters are unfamiliar for me to read them is the issue. Yeah.
When voters come by Pocahontas Point, which I believe is one of them.
Which one?
Pocahontas Point on Tuxedo.
Well, it was called Indian Point, or yeah, they've changed that for sure. Yeah.
So when voters come by, if you can't pronounce it, what do they do?
Well, in the letter, they've written them in both characters that are familiar to me and the ones that are unfamiliar to me. So I can read them. It's just that I wasn't like Quatums, Tishosham is the name of record that is being put in one spot. And the other one is Quatums Tishosham. Oh, that one, I already said that one. So it is easy to pick them out and you can read them. It's just, I haven't practiced them quite yet. And we'll get on that soon.
So if I'm a voter from out of country coming by and I have an emergency, can I pronounce the name?
Can you pronounce, if you go to another country, you can't always guarantee to pronounce those names either. With time.
No, but we are.
So Thatek, for example, Thatek is the new name for what we used to call Indian Point, and Thatek is not hard to say.
Councillor Elliott.
So my point, John, is that the names have been changed. It went through the regional district, and they did a letter of support or non-objection. And this is just for our information, this letter on our agenda. There's no decision for us to make.
So if there's any changes within the Powder River region, you have input?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. This one here was not for the city.
What I'm asking is if they want to change names within the.
Well, if that opportunity comes up, then we'll find out then. This is not the matter that we're discussing today.
There was not a role for the city in this one.
In the letter.
If that's your question.
There's a binder at the back of the room with all the letters and other notes from the meeting. You've got the abbreviated agenda. The full agenda package is in the back of the room in the binder or on the website.
I'm just wondering why you skipped it.
We didn't.
We didn't.
It's in the consent agenda, and the consent agenda is designed that way.
Sure.
Answered out.
An answer for the question. We have a consent agenda. It includes the resolution that you're talking about, the letter from the province. It was circulated to all of the members of council. Everybody knows what's in it. I've read it. I know where the places are. We have a consent agenda to avoid having a long debate about things that everybody agrees with. If any member of council disagreed with receiving that letter from the province, all they had to do is say, I'd like to separate that and debate it separately. Nobody did that. I assume it's because they read it and understood it and didn't have any reason to debate the motion. Though it was considered, and council voted in favor of receiving it. Well, I think you've already told us that you've read it and you know the name too.
Any other questions in the gallery? Okay, seeing no further questions, I believe I can just adjourn.
Yeah.
Call this meeting 4:31.